Hey, greetings everybody. Welcome to the Lexcia podcast. This is me, Wesley Pepper. This is episode 235. Lots going on in the world at the moment. Lots to talk about. Welcome back, Viwe Joka from the Headspace, all down the HB. Is it New Brighton, huh?
Yeah,
Sure, Viwe. Are you?
I'm
Firstly,
I'm
welcome
so
and greetings, my brother.
I'm so, great to be here. It's an honor once more. Love and respect the platform, so I'm pretty keen to get into this conversation.
Yeah, short man. Yeah, man. Thanks for making the time out. Just for my listeners, we've also been struggling. Ash, man, now one of the things with podcasting, with having a guest based scheduling.
Yeah.
Scheduling is it's a I think it's a skill. Yeah, lots of technicals. Anyway, I don't want to make it about scheduling today. But yeah, man. So what's the date today? It's the 1st of June, to my knowledge. We have lots have been happening in South Africa. We want to touch base a little bit of happening in pop culture
Yeah.
around the country, South Africa, and maybe the continent in general. So much is going on.
Mm.
Last Saturday we had that March and March, xenophobic, anti-intellectual, anti-African slop. Maybe a slop's not a good word. I'm trying to think of a good
You're
word.
starting
I just wanna
strong.
I
You're
wanna
starting
start off there,
strong.
man, because because I'm against that shit, man. I really am. I think it's anti-African, and it looks very it looks like it's coming from Israel and from the West. Trying to destabilize black people. Black on black violence is the old playbook. That thing as old as colonialism. So I've actually been trying to avoid social media a little bit over the weekend, at least regulate it. Because I don't like reading that shit all the time. It's not entertainment to me. It actually takes away it actually
Feel
takes
you.
more from me than it gives. So I've actually been avoiding. It's actually now only this morning, when I was sitting up, I was just going through seeing what was happening and so forth. But yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm out of the loop, but for the past, say, 4 days, I've been, I've only been checking notices and messages, kind of stop
Yeah.
scrolling. But then on your side, my brother, I know you've got lots on your mind, lots to say. So yeah, let's start off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty apt that you begin with um Gayton Mackenzie and that saga because I'm really interested in talking about pop culture outside of the perspective of taste because I think a lot of the times when we talk about popular culture, we these conversations tend to be restricted more to the signaling of the imagery. You know, people talk about how things appear to them, how things sound to them, whether it's music or something visual or both. But I think often than not, the inclination to dig deeper and ask ourselves, well, why the fuck are we even seeing this? Like, what does it say about the state of our country today? Like, what does it say about where we are as a people? Because I think one of the first things that need to be understood about popular culture is that it's part parcel of the culture industry. You know, I think pop culture isn't the organic thoughts and climate of the people. It's kind of like a curated mechanism where corporates get to choose what people get to see for the most part, you know? So I think
Yeah,
that if we understand that what we're looking at and what we're interacting with most of the time is something given to us under a particular agenda to sell some kind of identity politics to us based on how we identify with ourselves, based on whatever creed or code or beliefs we have, these algorithms study us and kind of sell these caricatures of ourselves back at us, and I feel like too many people are not aware of that machinery at work. And as a result, they just become, you know, as the word clearly says, consumers, you know? And when the relationship is between the consumer, then the culture industry is doing nothing but feeding you. and there is no real
Yeah.
critical breaking down
Yeah.
of what is actually being fed and how it consequently shapes them. So I think what I'm really like incessant on trying to bring up all the time I have these kind of conversations is, yo, we all identify with something. We all grow up in a world that shapes us and gives us some semblance of who we want to be or who we feel we already are. Um, and capitalism already has marketed aspects of culture that can easily fit you into a neat box. You are this person. You are the artsy type. You are
Yeah.
the poem
Yeah.
type. And so when one is kind of um entrenched smoothly into the machinery of capitalism and its agent pop culture, well, the game continues in another guise. You know, we just kind of keep flowing and we keep playing according to the rules of those who I think would not like to see people consider coming out of their own unchallenged boxes, you know?
Yeah, yes, I couldn't agree more there. You mentioned something, and I think this is a good point to jump off, is the algorithm. So, I can tell you, yeah, without a question of the doubt, without a, I can tell you, yeah, is that coming from the arts thing, that the biggest curator, the most powerful curator in the world, is the algorithm.
Yeah.
Musicians don't make music for people anymore. They don't make music and I'm talking about pop music. They don't make music for large groups of people, for a certain demographic. They make it for an algorithm.
Yeah.
Even the format panders towards that, which is concerning. Um, that's why everything sounds the same. That's why it's all about women selling their bodies, promoting alcohol and a type of a loose type of behavior, which I guess can be seen as promiscuous, but I think it's a bit deeper than that. And also just from a you also mentioned of like sort of acting, working in sort of everyone is working in their own silo. I think that's
Yeah.
also that are picked up. And then you get branded like that, and then the market. Um, in my case, the visual art, but that goes for music, it goes for books, it goes for TV and film. Um,
Yeah.
every genre, theater as well. If you are, in my case, quote unquote colored, male, my politics, my views on this and this, then they expect this type of work from me. And if I don't do that, then I'm outside of that box, and then I'm fucked, basically, because
Yeah.
they'll tell you straight up there's no market for your work, and I don't believe any of that shit. So let's actually pick it up there from that bit, man. Um, let me get your views on this. Where do you think we're heading, man? If you must try to forecast, let me say 3 years down the line, because we do have in South Africa we got local elections coming up. I think it's in
Yeah.
November. And these things matter. So what music you consume, whatever culture you're consuming, that's the politics. That's the feed you're gonna get. Where do you think we're going, man? What's the outcomes out of all of us, you think?
I love that question because I love speculating, you know. I think a lot about the direction of the different expressions that I see around me culturally, artistically. And so I think to answer that question from my perspective would be to kind of delve a little bit into the 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 structure of pop culture. I think there's an important distinction I want to make. There's always folk culture. There's always some kind of movement or movements bubbling from the undercommons, the underground, from the midst of the people. These things stem organically from the things people are going through, you know? So these are things that cannot be controlled by capital. The way that people respond to the system is what kind of shapes the artistic, literary, cultural expressions that they adopt. I'm talking about everything from amapiano to South African hip hop, South African jazz, you name it, South African fashion, South African art. it's all telling us something about where people are at, emotionally, spiritually, and just in their
Yeah.
disposition, in their composition. And I think what the culture industry then does, because it's always late to the show, it's always late to the show because a lot of the people who work on a corporate perspective cannot afford to genuinely distill people's real thoughts, people's authentic, decrying moments of trying to be authentic to where they are, because a lot of that wouldn't really make for good profit. So there's always this
Yeah.
transition from the folk culture and how it's turned
Yeah.
into pop culture. So, and I think that's how it uses itself to become popular to the people because it uses familiarity. It uses visual markers that you're familiar with and that you love. It uses the things that you relate with to give you basically a watered down, co-opted version of something that you already feel in the essence of your surroundings. So the danger with that is that a lot of people confuse the two for the same things. People think that when they are on their phone and kind of scrolling through their phone, they're actually seeing a distilled essence of who they are. They're actually seeing aspects of the things that they are naturally gravitated to. But there's more to it than that. I mean, it is that to a certain extent. It needs to be. It needs to have a certain level of real sincerity about how it studies you and your taste and your choices. But what it needs to do for the most part, it being the machinery of culture industry that turns into pop culture, is turn you into a client, a customer, a potential money making opportunity. And so for it to do that, there are certain rules it needs to play by. And I think the most fundamental rule is polarization. It needs to separate and create antagonistic lines where the thing you are is based mainly on the thing that you are not. So a lot of people, in fact, I think internet culture is characterized today mostly by antagonism and polarity, by fighting, by the things
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
more than the things. And I think this colors the way we learn. It colors the way we grow. It colors the things that we end up understanding about the world because it's already presented in a way that tells us that there are people out there who are not like you and me,
Yeah.
who we can't necessarily relate with. And I think that's not what happens in real life. In real life, people are way more complex to be reduced to
Yeah.
these very smooth, convenient boxes where you can say, oh, he's a jazz head, she's a hip hop head, they're queer, they're non binary. Yes,
Yeah.
these things are aspects of who a lot of people are, but there's always some nuance. There's always things that come from a dimension of different places. And I think looking at today's pop culture, we don't have a true reflection of how real, eclectic, and diverse it actually is. There's people doing incredibly interesting things by
Yeah.
combining worlds that are, to the algorithm, not supposed to make sense together. So I think to get to the ultimate question, this what I see in the next 3 years is an increasing tendency towards that. But also, there is a backlash from artists who understand the dangers of having to participate in this online economy, and they're trying their best to kind of speak with more authentic voice and not fall for the typical influencer tropes, this podcast right now works through views. It works through being watched. And the more people who watch this episode and others, the more it grows. So we can't accept the fact that you have a bottom line. You have some kind of a bottom line that will allow the infrastructure of Art Lexica to grow. But when it becomes defined by that, it kind of loses its juice. And I think that's what is happening and is continuing to grow is that people are chasing the numbers. People are chasing the growth orientation, and they don't understand that it's kind of it's they have it backwards because you grow just by being who you are, and because who you are attracts people who are into the things you talk about. and people who are genuinely into what you're providing. And when you do that, these are the kind of subscribers and viewers who stay with you because they're not there because you're some kind of a product. They're there because they really feel like you're someone who in real life they'd be able to actually have a conversation with. And
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
the 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 parasocial nature of it all. And that's important because that's how it works. It works through familiarity. And I think the industry understands that and it tries to imitate that, but it never gets close because you can't fake authenticity. So it just doesn't gel if we're having this conversation about pop culture and I pull out a brand and I happen to kind of situate some kind of selling point within an organic conversation. I think there's this conflict of needs where you know, capitalism will always make its bottom line. Even in this new internet age, it's managed to weasel itself into the DNA of the internet, something that I think was originally supposed to be an a kind of anarchic way of trying to find freedom through breaking rules,
mm,
but it's been co-opted. The whole internet is a business now. So I think I think everybody needs to kind of get that because when you get that, then your attention is not taken whilst you do not know. Your attention is not turned into some kind of fixed point for companies, and you don't become a zombie at prey to the identity markers that are continuously being bombarded to you in your own device. And in that way, you feed the machine. So to ask me where it's going, I think it is going increasingly there. It's going to this place where it's more and more um, inclined towards becoming just another money-making scheme that cashes out from people's identity politics. But I do not want to leave without underscoring the fact that there's always a tinge of resistance. So there's a lot of creators,
yeah,
online who are trying to navigate
yeah,
themselves authentic in these spaces, because we do have to find a way to survive, but we don't have to compromise the essence of our values, and most importantly, we don't have to define ourselves according to what we hate, without truly understanding it. So I think that the change really lies there. If more people were willing to kind of study the things that they find distasteful, the politics that bothers them, the things that they really don't agree with, and kind of ask themselves, well, then how do people become like this? How do we become this different and so polarizingly different? How do we become just a set of in groups that just keep clashing in on each other, where the whole thing is just turning into a kind of circus of opinions and mass trials at the behest of cancel culture whenever this one in group feels like it can't relate to the gruesome or terrible behavior of another in group. So, without lapping on about it too much, that's where I observe it. I think it's in a place where we are actively having um, a real stretch at the capacity of where this can take us when we want to be authentic about it.
sure. Yeah, you said a lot there. I want to pick it up actually. You mentioned there of a lot of creatives trying to counter this, let me just say, this type of pop culture, and that's true. I know some of these people personally. I like to consider myself one as well, and I can tell you without a shadow of a question. Let's actually go there because I think this is relevant. So what I do is so this platform gets this podcast I publish on YouTube, right? For a bunch of reasons. Firstly, it's the biggest video sharing platform in the world. I mean, its listeners are global, are substantial, and especially from a South African perspective, like in terms of search engines, YouTube is also right up there. I think it's Google and then YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's a platform that is if people are looking for certain content, they can find it easy, right? So that's the first one. The second one also use the tools, and it's free. And the tools it gives as a creative, I think is all right. But here's the thing. So I've noticed uh, um, there's in fact I got an email like that. I think it was early on this morning and last night to so there's this group of all these YouTube creators. So they send you information on how to better your podcast and so forth and so forth, right? And most of the stuff is run by AI. Most of these are AI bots. And one of the stuff that they keep pressing that I should do is the following: is my titles, no? It's got to be more
Yeah.
sensationalist. So instead of saying speaking to Viwe Joka about pop culture, I would say Viwe Joka melts down and
Yeah. That's
hates.
the
I
thing.
must. You have to hate somebody or something. You have to have a meltdown. You have to have a. There's another popular word that not just stuck my mind. So it's either that. My
I think maybe
thumbnails has got to
for ratings. Excuse me.
right. Yeah,
Isn't that the word?
exactly. My thumbnails
Yeah.
has got to be generic. It's got to be generic. It's got to look like everyone else's, and they almost encourage you to use this template that was actually started or conceptualized by Mr. Beast, which is another very interesting conversation. Maybe
Yeah.
we can touch on that. And if my listeners are not familiar with him, maybe your kids know about him. And I
Yeah.
would look at your kids' history because that guy's problematic. But they sort of they they encourage this generic rage bait packaging, and the algorithms pick up on that, and they don't want. And if it goes outside of that, your content gets pushed down, right? Okay, so um, what I've noticed here's another thing. You made a point about being authentic. Check this out, man. So this podcast has been
Yeah.
running for a while now. I mean, I'm on 200 and whatever episodes, right? And I've done countless of collaborations, blah 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 blah. And in the beginning, I used Zoom, and if you know the quality, especially the video quality, there is not great. You actually need a
Got
CD.
it.
You
Yeah.
need you need you need very good equipment to make it workable. So the quality
Yeah.
wasn't that great. However, my my views and actually all my stats, especially around watch time, not so much watch time. I think more just views. I think the watch time actually grew. Was towered over what I'm making over the past 2.5 years, or let's just keep it a round figure, 2 years, right? So my quality has shot up, um, but it didn't. I would back then when I was recording, I thought, shit, man, just a better camera, better this, will boost, and actually the opposite happened, right? And I thought that was
Yeah.
fascinating. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he was saying a very similar thing that you were saying about authenticity, about
Mm.
people relating to something. I mean, I don't have the data to say that that is the reason, but I find it fascinating that how how as a content creator, and I don't consider myself as a content creator. Okay, I'm an artist, and this is just another medium that I'm working in. I'm not a fucking content creator. Content creator takes selfies, shakes their backside, and does you TikTok videos. I don't do any of that shit. I don't do the selfie thing. But I find it fascinating how as a podcaster you are sort of pushed into that generic AI slop kind of direction in order to boost your views. No?
Yeah.
How they encourage rape bait. And here's just another thing, and I want to get your take on that. If I must look at what I'm doing versus corporate media, um, if I must look at corporate media does that. They would take
Yeah.
a story, and they'll look for the most grotesque viewpoint, and they'll use that, and they'll push that into everyone's faces. Whereas that thing that they're pointing out is probably a tenth of the thing, because you also mentioned about nuances. All that shit is gone. Um, as again, coming back as a podcaster, as an artist, they sort of want you to when you get boxed, similar to the US thing, there's the left wing and there's a right wing, there's no in between. You either pro this or you anti that. There's no nuance. And that is a narrative, and the same applies for, because I use Instagram mostly. I use other smaller social media platforms, but my traffic and feed of that is minimal, so I don't really, I don't really promote it because I don't get much hits or views from this, like Threads and Blue
Yeah.
Sky, etc., etc. But so these major platforms want you to do that. So here's the question. You we spoke earlier on, like what's it like moving forward. I get that. What's your take on what I said? Um, how do you think that is shaping artists' processes? How that is
Yeah.
shaping what content they're creating?
Mm. Um, I
Yeah,
think how it's shaping artist process is that there is this strong push for artists to be so cognizant of how what they do translate to profit that a lot of people force themselves to a place where they become performative versions of who they are. And by that I mean because they now feel the need to play to an audience, they feel the need to present themselves intentionally, and get something out of that. There is a kind of laundry list of ways in which they are given by that same culture, that same algorithm, which kind of spurts it out, that restricts things to kind of the same format of doing things. I mean, you ever notice that across the board, almost regardless of the style and origins of what you're looking at, there is a particular kind of dominant way that people talk to their
yeah,
their folks. There's the typical, "Hey guys, it's your boy, whoever." There's a format. There's a given format that people are taught to put themselves out there
I've
in the world.
noticed
And
that.
yes, and
I've
it's
noticed
like
that.
it's driven by market and by what works. I mean, to an extent where
Yeah,
artists are now told when they sign big, massive contracts. I mean, I myself um, have, and the team from the Headspace have had many run-ins and encounters with potential corporate opportunities, with sponsoring opportunities. Because, I mean, as you know, as a YouTube channel, you get to the point where you would appreciate some financial assistance from a brand that you feel like you can associate with what you're trying to talk about,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's no crime in looking for that because again, we're navigating the climate. But where I think the crime does lie, where I think the sin does lie, is when people forget that ultimately it's about connecting with people on a level beyond just what makes them comfortable. I mean, I'm gonna try and sum it up in a simple statement by saying if if we're not using the internet to some extent to challenge ourselves and our knowledge of the world, then we're not using it. It's using us. I want to
I
make
like that.
it as
I
as
like
as
that.
like as emphatic as possible because I just think that's the dynamic. Because before the era of smartphones and where we are right now, the pop culture scene belonged to big, massive companies who, I mean, you mentioned a certain South African artist, and I think the term you used to describe them was a plant, And the thing is, I think plants are real, and plants are entirely they're entirely an invention of the old school pop culture. Because what it always tried to do is it tried to scour the real underground. It tried to go to to where people are,
Yeah.
and it would try to find people who can help translate whatever's going on in society on a level that amounts to nothing but profit. This has happened to absolutely every scene. And that's how every scene gets to a place where it starts off as this authentic boom that erupts from
Yeah.
the actual
Yeah.
communities that build it. But then at
Yeah.
some point, it gets co-opted. It gets bought in to the infrastructure of capitalism thoroughly. And I think industry plants represented that. They were people who sometimes were taken from these actual communities, but whose values changed from actually representing these communities to selling themselves and making a quick buck. You know, today you have uh, big, massive artists who have a conversation with people because people vicariously live through them. People relate to their aspirations, their lifestyles, the way that they dress, or whatever it is. People just identify again with these people, and that's what's used to kind of rake them in, and it turns into an easy process. So I think, again, when we're not aware of that this is actually what's happening, we really are at the whim of whatever these companies want us to buy into. And they do that by making it resemble who we are. They do that by making it resemble what we stand for.
Yeah.
And I say resemble. I say
Yeah.
resemble because it never is the thing. Capitalism will never represent the interests of the people. The only thing it's here to do is just sell you something. And it's gotten to the level where what's being sold to us is our identities. And how it's being done is it's attention. That's why it's called the attention economy. So I think I really wanted to chat about this because I'm hoping that this gospel of attention, these kind of conversations can resonate, and people can actually be sparked to consider where their attention is actually going, and if they
Had a break in, the line cut there, while we were still finishing his point. Um, if you listen to this podcast before, this shit happens
it takes them.
basically
They
every
don't
week.
want to. They don't want to have these conversations, Wesley. They're listening.
Yeah, these things happen. And it also, I've actually
Brother,
become,
exactly.
I can definitely roll with that, man. But yeah, man, do you wanna just finish off that point, because I actually want to come in with something else, which I want to get your take on. Do you mind just wrapping up that
Okay,
point,
cool.
man?
Cool. I'm gonna wrap it up as concise as I can. Basically, it's like just being responsible and accountable for our relationship with our technological tools, and not misconstruing these artifacts as just devices, as inert objects that we use and turn on when we want to. But to understand that the moment we do turn these devices on, they use us as much as we use them. And there is a deep relationship at work in the way that the technologies that we use to connect with each other or try and make our lives better in some way are shaping us. I mean, this starts way back to from radio to television. If you look at how
It does.
um,
It does.
technology, more specifically media technologies, how they've shaped people and people's perceptions, people's culture of being. It's really, really deep. We could go so long just on that alone, but to cut it short, I think the average um, person or the average consumer is not really thinking about this relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I wanna come up. There was a point I wanted to make there. So just bear with me, man. So we mentioned, you mentioned a lot there about sort of a responsibility, as an artist, using these tools. How the internet is shaping our not just our culture, but our viewpoint, our politics, etc., and so forth. And here's a point that I find is also pretty relevant. So I think it was Drake, that wishy-washy MC from the States there. I think it was last month sometime that Spotify removed, I think, a few billion of his streams because it
Yeah.
was bots. It was AI bots. I also read that on, and don't quote me on the numbers yet because I think my numbers are off here. But on Instagram, there is over it is either over 10 or 100 million people that has over a million followers, right? Maybe my numbers are
Mm.
a bit off there. And if
Okay.
you look at somebody Beyonce, I don't know, somebody famous or whatever, right? Some you at even locally take Minnie Dlamini, Bonang, people like that. How many of those
Yeah.
people? I'm talking on multiple platforms here. How many of those people's friends, subscribers, and so forth are actually real people? Are actually real
Mm.
people, right? Um, um,
Yeah.
um, 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 I actually quite critical on that, and this is my point. But let me just give you this example. So again, as a podcaster, I get yeses, bro. I get approached mostly on LinkedIn, which is why I don't fuck with LinkedIn. I think it's a bit dodgy for me. Um,
Yeah. I agree.
I get emails fucking every week from some Bangladeshi, some Pakistani, some Indian fella. Actually, I went into a meeting with a one brother one time, so I really wanted to know, like, yeah, is this a real thing? And he was
Mm.
charging me north of 10 grand because he was charging me in USD. It was north of 10 grand per month for him to generate traffic for me, right? And he had all these
Yeah.
flowery words to say how it will boost this and boost that, but it was north of 10 grand, which was fucking.
Sizable.
I don't know. I don't know how did he come up with that number. Who's gonna pay for that anyway? But this is my point. Is that I can take about 5 grand of my own money and I can give it to YouTube and they can send that shit to a click farm somewhere in Bangladesh, and then all of a sudden this episode has over 10,000 views, right? Maybe the watch
Yeah.
time won't match up, but what's this thing? Advertisers, sponsors, and so forth. Some of them don't do due diligence properly because and the reason why I'm saying that is because I've seen other podcast platforms and so forth whose numbers are substantial, and I can tell you now that part of that is also a click farming or something coming from a click farms, pardon, not clickbait.
Mm.
And I think that's a very, very interesting point because we talk about so if I must see some popular, okay, I actually want to get into streaming from music as well, because I know that one person,
Mm.
one 12-year-old child can listen to one song on repeat the whole day. And that all clicks as a view, and then you will say that your track
Yeah.
got billions or hundreds of millions of views. These things are fake, right? The one thing that the post streaming world allowed us was to buy a CD or record or whatever. It takes effort, it takes money, effort, and those numbers could be manipulated, but not like this. So if you look at
Mm.
and just the last point, and I don't necessarily want to go political, but I'm just going to use it as an example. If you look at the alt right globally, not just in the US, you can look in the UK, even here in South Africa with this March and March bullshit. All of a sudden, this movement came. I think it was in April. Nobody knew where they were. In May, March, nobody knew where they were. All of a sudden, they've got hundreds of thousands of their
Yo.
pages
Oh
are,
man.
you know, with all this interaction and so forth. I
No
all right,
problem.
all right, everybody. Yeah, you can probably notice that the fucking line cut again. Um,
Telling you,
yeah,
they're listening to us.
they are. They are. I joke about it every week that AI is listening and they purposely sabotaging because it happened twice, twice, and I'm not joking. That I was talking about AI and then poop, then the
Hey,
line cut.
it's in the air.
Like
It's in the air.
these people are listening and they giggling somewhere in cyberspace. Yeah, yeah.
I
I
mean,
don't
it
know.
must
I don't
be
know what
like
that means.
to the external viewer, it might sound like, you know, some kind of crackpot tinfoil conspiracy stuff, but I think to a large extent, whether we kind of strip the esoteric occultism feel of it all, we are being surveilled. This is real. I mean, we
Absolutely.
this this is out there. I don't know if people don't grasp how providing your information to these platforms gives them direct access to your texts, to your images. I mean, this is real. We do
Everything.
it the most everything. So the notion that we're
Everything.
being watched wouldn't be sounding
It's
as
true.
far-fetched and cartoonish as it used to anymore. This is real shit.
I I heard. Let's listen to this now. And this is also not some tinfoil hat thing. By okay, I'm not even gonna do that. But if you do the peace sign, I almost did it. But hear me, right? I can detect your fucking fingerprints, bro. They can pick
It's
up your
real.
fingerprints, and that way they got access to your biometrics. And like that is my banking app. Well, I mean, they'll be disappointed if they they'll be disappointed if they go on my banking app because there's not much there. But like they
You know what?
yeah.
I think
Anyway,
this is but hold up. Yeah, I think before we segue, this is actually a good l- big piece of the
yeah,
conversation. I think
yeah, yeah,
how the perpetual sleep mode that people seem to be on when they
yeah,
participate with popular culture is kind of entrenched through laughing at these notions of grand
yeah,
control
yeah,
as
yeah,
far-fetched and weird. Like, look, not every conspiracy is grounded in sound research, but the
mm,
fact that we are part of a global network of surveillance that studies our patterns, that follows us everywhere, in order for us to become data and information for companies that are trying to shape our lives in their own terms should not be something that feels tinfoilish. This is real. And I think us scoffing at the fact that the AI is watching is a bit tongue in cheek, but in reality, this shit is happening. You're right.
absolutely, man. It actually I've been covering AI or the rise since ChatGPT got launched 2 years ago, 2 3 or something like that. Check here, Nat,
Something
and
like
and
that.
and this is again just how crazy the world is. A friend of mine, well, he's no longer. That I had the first episode, and I'm not saying this is related, but he ended up committing suicide, right? Uh,
Mm.
I mean, this is not related, but it's kind of a very eerie, uh, timing and
Circumstance.
association. Yeah, it was very, very
Mm.
eerie and it freaked me out. It seriously creeped me out. And I can go on and on about shit that I've seen. For example, the shorts feed on YouTube. Most of that shit is AI, man. And how it triggers how the video triggers certain emotions, certain times of the day, certain things is a bit it's the timing is
It's impeccable. It's impeccable.
it's
We
it's a
are in
thing.
that
It's a
phase.
thing.
We are in that phase. We are in that phase. And I mean, it's crucial because um finally we are in that age that has kind of been foreseen in a way that screams doom. So I think when you talk like this to most people, they will dismiss it because it tends to have associations with some kind of grand apocalyptic vision of the end of the world. And I think even that in and of itself isn't such a thrown out idea if you're able to understand that
Not
most of these visions and prophecies of the future are just kind of allegorical, symbolic reflections of the fact that there are major powers that are using our spirit, our energy, and our attention to gain more and more power over this world. This is just the state of where things are going. Whether you believe it's capitalism in and of itself as a structure, or there's something a little bit more eerie and occult going on. I think it ultimately says we are not in charge of the full scope of our lives. And this is why conversations like these are so important, because I mean, if we don't choose to try and take aspects of our power back every day, especially with the devices we have that give us a window into the things we want to see, then we're continuously giving more to a system that is doing nothing but being hell bent on destroying us and harvesting our energy to perpetuate the wealth of a few.
I can't agree more. In fact, as you say, as you're saying that, my screen is reconnecting. Imagine. But like, I mean, we're still recording, so we're good to go. If I want to bring it
Yeah.
back to that point before we had the second disruption, and it sort of leads to, it sort of flows with what we were saying. What I was saying, and I'm just gonna repeat it because I'm sure I think I'll edit that bit out. But anyway, I'll cross that in post production. What I want to mention is fake views, say fake subscribers, and these click farms. Um,
Yes.
the fact that most of these celebrities, politicians, sportsmen, etc., and just the average Joe, most of these subscribers, views, and so forth are bots. I've noticed it on my own page, on my own channel, where I would lose subscribers just randomly and I will gain subscribers randomly. Usually, YouTube, if somebody has a Gmail account and you get a subscriber, then you see the person's name and everything. And what I usually do is I just go into their page to verify if it's a real person. But I've noticed countless
Yeah.
times that my number will jump and fall randomly, even if I'm not putting out content, which makes no sense. And I've honestly relate back, and I mentioned this point, and maybe my numbers is off, but on Instagram, I think there's either 10 million or 100 million people with over a million subscribers, which doesn't work out. The maths don't work out. And the other point was, and I want to bring it back more locally, to that March and March Afrophobic movement that they have. This girl, Jacinta Mkombezi Zuma, a few months, I think in the second or third month of March, nobody knew who she was. I read somewhere she was some news readers somewhere, and all of a sudden, between 3 months, their subscribers and everything has jumped, and they're all over corporate media. I do believe, and I don't have the facts to just to substantiate what I'm saying, and I want to make that clear. So if I'm wrong here, obviously I know. I don't have a thin skin. I can take criticism. Um, but I do believe like movements like that and others, and I'm talking more in pop culture as well, to do with music and so forth. Sometimes somebody is unknown one day and the next day they got over 100,000 views, likes, and stuff like that. I do believe that some of that stuff goes via click farms, which is really a fucking problematic situation, because that means that anybody with access to a credit card, and that has some money on credit card, can just get
Are
access
we still
to can
are we
just
still
can
connected?
just yeah. It's busy reconnecting, but it's still recording.
Okay.
We're still recording. What's your
Okay,
take
great.
on that, man? You got what I was saying?
Uh, bits and pieces of it, if you can reiterate a bit. It was cutting and glitching.
Oh, yeah, man. It's just a take on fake views, fake subscribers, bots, that are
Yeah.
boosting people's accounts, and how that is setting trends. It's sort of building a house on sand.
Yeah, I mean, to ground it back home, I'm reminded by the flag in the background. I think if we study just South African pop culture, um, South African media was obviously built by the colonial apartheid force and infrastructure. Um, and for the most part, as we were ushered into the democracy, the so-called democracy, um, there was this kind of PR campaign to re-image South Africa as, the quote unquote Rainbow Nation. And what this was kind of one of the like real fundamental examples of how politics and media have always been linked. And the media uses pop culture to send the signals that it wants people to be shaped through. And the Rainbow Nation mythos was the first real thrust into this illusion that there is some kind of real unity among South Africans. When we go into the actual reality of what it means to be a South African, it couldn't be more far from that. But we have to have these romantic images of people of different ethnicities drinking a beer together over a game of rugby to kind of give us this idea that there is a veneer of a new South Africa. And this was true even in the kind of shows that were being built. Look at the early programs, the kind of TV shows and game shows that were being built. If it wasn't modeled after kind of American mass culture
Yeah.
consumer uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff, it was simply trying to do that in a South African context. Look at something like
Yeah.
like Generations. Generations was
Yeah.
important because it became South Africa's first kind of uh, uh, homegrown soapy. But if you look at what Generations
Wow.
is, it's just kind of like Mzansi, Bold and the Beautiful. And it was none of what was going on in Generations was actually happening in South Africa, like in real life. It was aspirational, you know, and this aspirational quality is something that capitalism always uses. And I think um it's a great tell for people who are really looking for the authentic spaces. Capitalism has to give you a dream to chase for. It has to give you something that's seemingly going to position your life in this place where you reach for the stars, you become what you're quote unquote meant to be. But the reality of that is a large majority of most people don't end up being what they want to be. They settle for what they can be in a world that makes it difficult for them to really, really be the things that they feel they need to be in life. And so this dream that, we're here to fulfill our destiny and it can all work if we just buy this book or listen to this celebrity, or listen to that song. And I think that for me is kind of the tell in when you see formerly authentic art totally co-opted by the system. You see it when it starts being hesitant in challenging the system itself, but it becomes almost in tandem. It works well with what capitalism says to you, which says, go seek the dream. And I think what people need to be careful of is that even the idea of revolution is a brand. Even the idea of speaking against the system has been turned into just another product in the marketplace. And there's artists who perform revolution, but they're actually
Yeah.
using the aesthetics and the language of revolution. And I think in South African pop culture, for the most part, we don't really have a large number of that. What we have in mass is a whole bunch of artists who are almost like totally enthralled with the vision of just being product placement, you know? And you have a whole bunch of people who are curating these visual identity markers. So whatever it is that people feel aroused by politically, these triggers are used to stimulate, as you mentioned earlier on. So I'm just kind of mentioning this because in the context of South Africa, I feel like so much is passing by. There's the biggest podcast in this country is what? Last time I checked, MacG. Um,
MacG.
and I think if we look at why, if you look at the format that MacG provides, if you look at the kind of conversations he has, he he and his team have put themselves in this place of being commentators of South African popular culture. But look at the slant, look at the style. It's always kind of based on more
Misogynist, misogyny.
it concerns me a lot. Excuse me, can you still see me?
Yeah, yeah, go for it. Yeah, we we
Okay,
we speak.
I
We
had
still
I had a bit
recording.
of a glitch there. But I think it's
Yeah,
these kind of
your phone
things
was ringing.
that speak to where we are in South Africa with our pop culture. All our celebrities, even those who claim to represent real worthwhile political causes, like the recognition of different diverse people's rights, the 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 massive plight of women in this country and the things that they're experiencing at
Wow.
the hands of
Hey, the
men.
AI is listening, huh?
Just a whole lot of things that are
AI don't
crucial for
fuck
us to be
around,
talking
bro.
about. When these things are brought into the sphere of pop culture, they're reduced to antagonistic spats online that are there just to kind of position where people are and where their enemies are. There's no real genuine dialogue. There's no living with this politics. There's no, again, it goes to nuance. And how does this look like? How would it look like to see it? I think what it looks like is this term again, creators um trying to find platforms that allow them to have more power over the content that they are building and to have the kind of discussions that are not there to trigger people's trauma, but are there to open up the purview of the things that they consider. Very interesting art and visual stuff is coming out. And I think spaces like Patreon, spaces like, spaces that are trying to undercut the mass buying power of companies like Google, and by virtue YouTube and Meta, um, there are people who realize that they can't do much within the framework of these spaces, so they're trying to develop spaces where like-minded people can actually cultivate conversations that are orientated to be more holistic, that are orientated to be more informative, even when the quality of what is being brought by is not necessarily pedantic. It's not trying to teach. It teaches as a result of the approach that it uses. And I think people like yourself, and to a certain degree, what we're trying to do with the headspace as well, we need to, again, we as video essayists or people with channels online, we need to be responsible and accountable. And this is something that I don't see through a MacG, because he has so much power and he has ruffled so many feathers that create the margin of money that give him the profit, because people will watch. They'll watch mainly because they're angry and they just want to fight whatever he's saying, or they actually relate to it because it mocks the kind of things that they feel deserve being mocked at without really addressing them. So that makes money for MacG. MacG does not have to be responsible or accountable for any offensive or ignorant thing he says. He doesn't have to learn anything new. He doesn't have to teach his audience anything new. And I think that's the primary signal that shows us that something is fucking wrong with the state of popular culture in this country specifically and just in the world in general.
Absolutely.
So I want to pose a question to you, Brother Wesley. I want to say, do you think it's possible for us to have creators that are popular and still informative and responsible? Or are we just kind of having this little conversation that's also a pipe dream and, won't be able to kind of
So, in response to Viwe's question, just before I get there, yes, man, we've been dealing with technical issues this entire broadcast, um, network issues, and maybe something else. I don't have the facts on that, but maybe I'll address that on a future episode, or you can check my social media pages for that, because I do actually talk about that. I don't really want to mention it on this answer for obvious reasons, but the short answer to Viewers' question is yes, absolutely. But I don't think we can do that within the art ecosystem, because it's set up in such a way that what is fed to the public is controlled by certain gatekeepers. Now, yes, they do have a role to play, and yes, they are critical, because I do believe we do need curators and a form of gatekeeping, because there is good art and there is bad art. And but I think with what viewer is asking, and where the conversation was going, I think that we should, the only way that we can push our art to a broader audience will be through collaborating and working with coders and with coders, developers, web designers, and so forth. People who work with coding. So there's things like search engine optimization, um, and there's other ways that I'm not actually very queued up on. I know there is certain tricks, but I don't like to speak on something I don't have all the information of. So I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm just gonna leave it at search engine optimization. SEO was it is yeah, that one. Um, I do think that that is the only way that, in order for us to push our art to a broader audience, I think the only way we can do that, unfortunately, is through the metaverse, or TikTok. As you guys know, I don't really fuck with TikTok. So I've never been on the app, so I'm not really sure how it works practically, but I know the theory and through other people, of course. But I do believe that, that this type of content, firstly, this type of art, firstly, it does have an audience. Absolutely, it does. This oversimplification of markets, I think, is bullshit. There are absolutely people who are out there purposely looking for stuff like this, for art that we are doing, and I do think it is relevant, which is why I'm doing it. But I do believe in working with these guys, because they have the skill set and the tools to manipulate. Maybe that's not the right word, but to work with the code, or redesign, or recode our art, put it on these social media platforms, and in that way reach a new audience. Another alternative will be is to build our own platform, which is something which I'm personally invested on. If you are a regular to this podcast, you'll probably know that. I do believe that is the only thing. I'm a big, one of my favorite books, and I read this probably close to 30 years ago, 20, 25, 30 years ago, is The Art of War, by Sun Tzu. And he speaks there of you can't really engage with your enemy on their battleground, because they control the rules. They set the rules. Um, the only way to practically engage with your enemy, and in this case, the enemy is not necessarily enemy. It is a new markets. It is new markets. It's the art industry. I don't like to use that word enemy to describe it, because it is not right. I don't have any enemies. Um, but yeah, will be is to create a platform, is for artists to come together collectively. That is, probably set up some huge, I don't know, some workshop fucking thing where we have this bunch of developers, coders. We're saying this is what we have. This is who we want to sell it to. You do your magic, you code, and so forth, and we can reach our audience. I Another option on top of that will be is to partner with people to do with hardware, with cell phones. Now I'm aware that there is no cell phone, or South African or African based a cell phone or tech company, and that too is a very interesting conversation. I do believe that, yeah, I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, because that's another topic. But I do believe that that is the only way. I don't think we can engage with this using tools, or not tools, using strategies which you would use for a physical space. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's absolutely not the same. And just the last closing point on that is that I do believe in collaborating with with these coders. We have to most probably change the format of our work, of our art. What that is, I don't know, because I do believe with technology changing and so forth, with gadgets changing and so forth, it will change over time. And I do believe that that is the only way. If I'm wrong, I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. I'm definitely up to hearing what you have to say about that. And just in wrapping up, if you got this far, this podcast, I appreciate it. Please smash that like and subscribe, or that subscribe button. I'll really appreciate it. It helps the algorithm, as I was saying. My understanding that one of the major push, or one of the major things that pushes content is people engaging with it. So if you can do that, I'll appreciate it. Much thanks to Viwe Joka from the Headspace down there in Port Elizabeth, in Klobega, in the Eastern Cape. We were talking offline after the recording that we will definitely, we will try to do something like this on a monthly basis. I think I'm definitely keen to do that, to sort of talk on various things in the in the pop art space or the cultural space, various trends. I do think that it's relevant to what I'm doing, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I will be posting on the Facebook page. Oh shit, man! I keep forgetting to say that we do have a Facebook page. It is the Art Lexcia podcast. You'll find it there. And then I'm on Instagram, of course, and you'll find me there too, and on Threads. So it's all at Wesley Pepper. So you can find me there. I will be posting on like how Viwe and I will be doing this in the future. We'll most probably do something else, probably, I don't know, soon, and very soon. But much thanks to, like I said, much thanks to Viwe for coming through. If you got this far in this podcast, I really appreciate it. Much love to that. And I think that's it. And I'll catch you next week. Peace.